evening, it's 8 o'clock. I'm Sally Baudet, live from Johannesburg. Your top stories this evening.
Criminals that were stealing people's phones, stabbing people, attacking people, sexually assaulting.
Concert chaos. 7 suspects arrested after numerous muggings outside the FNB Stadium after the Global Citizen Festival last night. Who was to blame? The EFF denies being involved after a Vodacom store was vandalized by a group claiming to be EFF supporters. The Deputy Justice Minister calls for gun-free courts across the country after last week's double murder-suicide in a Durban courtroom. The Global Citizen Concert, one of the highlights of our year in South Africa, has been marred by what happened outside the FNB Stadium after the event last night. Scores of festival goers were robbed and assaulted as they streamed out of the concert in Soweto. The police have been criticised for not doing enough to protect people. And here's eyewitness Michael Cost.
We saw women being attacked and how we saw that the biggest victims were female here last night. It was extremely horrific, it was extremely traumatizing, and we just tried to get to safety. We didn't know where to go. We walked 4 kilometers away from the scene, and everywhere around us there were people crying, people running, people bleeding, and it was just mayhem. There were no SAPs here, there were no Metro Police specifically here at Sasol Garage, where most of the criminal activity was happening, or along the Nasrec Road. So the SAPs were only protecting the festival VIPs and performers, and no one cared about the festival goers.
Pretty serious allegations there. Well, Johannesburg Metro Police have since arrested 7 people, and Janka Tome was at that media briefing a little earlier. Let's just go back a little bit. This fantastic concert, something that everyone in South Africa was looking forward to, and then disaster after the concert ended. Can you give us an idea of what happened and the scale? How many people do we think were mugged? Are we talking 10? Are we talking 100? Are we talking 1,000?
Well, if you just look at that CCTV footage that we got from the Sasol Garage, was just about 1.4 kilometers down the street from the entrance at the FNB Stadium. We understand that shortly after the conference, people started moving away down the street to where we understand most of the Uber drivers were picking up their customers. Specifically, Michael Cost, who we spoke to, his Uber driver told him to wait for him, probably at the Sasol Garage. And that is where they started realizing that people are been complaining about their cell phones being stolen. Suddenly they said you heard more people screaming, you heard people crying, people we heard were carrying around bricks to try and protect themselves. Also, what we understand is that the cell phone signal, for some reason, I don't know if it was just too many people that were probably there, but the apps were also not working. So we heard some people were moving down the street to maybe be able to get Ubers or other means of transport down the street. But some people have described it as a horror movie. Some people say it's like an action movie on that you see, you can't even imagine. It just people screaming, crying, just moving around. And as we heard from the police, or we heard that the police apparently was not there.
Yes, now they've been a little bit defensive. They're saying only one official complaint has been laid, which is quite remarkable given the scale of what we're seeing in those videos and the outpouring on social media. But they have arrested 7 people. Now, you were at that presser earlier with the Johannesburg MMC for Public Safety. Whose job was it and who messed up?
That's the big question, and I have to say we haven't heard much from the police's side, except they're saying there's been 1 case opened. This evening we finally heard from the Johannesburg Metro Police Department, them calling a press briefing along with the MMC for Safety, Michael Son, basically saying they're not pointing fingers at the police, but saying that the overall security detail or operation was under the control of the SAPS, saying that the JMPD was largely responsible for directing traffic, and saying that their officers were there.
And also the allegation from that eyewitness who says that there's a perception that they were more interested in watching the concert and keeping an eye on the celebrities. Do you think that's a fair criticism or not?
Well, what they're saying is that if you compare to how many people or how many security from JMPD to police officers were there before the concert compared to after, he just said that it is absolutely shocking because you could barely move and you had to go through massive security detail just to enter this concert. But as soon as they got out, there was seemingly no one there. And even they said that some people at the Sasol garage called for police, but still they say that they were left alone.
Well, a very bitter end to what was quite a remarkable concert, a very inspirational mandate behind it. So many people who got into that concert had done good works to earn free tickets and end up being robbed. Well, thank you very much for giving us the latest. I'm sure there'll be more developments. That's our reporter on the story, Yanka Tolme. Moving on now, and the economic freedom fighters say they are not responsible for trashing a Vodacom store in Polokwane this weekend, but the party has at the same time criticised the mobile phone operator. At last week's Vodacom Journalist of the Year Awards, one speaker accused EFF leadership of being, quote, abusers of democracy. The EFF and media have, of course, been at loggerheads over the past few weeks with spats over the party's treatment of journalists. Slindile Masikane has more.
Damage and destruction. A group claiming to be EFF supporters trashed this shop in Polokwane's Mall of the North.
Mall of the North? The EFF have just been in here.
It comes after Corruption Watch chairperson Mavuso Msimang displayed a picture of Julius Malema and Floyd Shivambu at the Vodacom Journalists Awards ceremony. The EFF leaders were labelled abusers of democracy. Vodacom has distanced itself from Msimang's speech, saying his views are his own. At the same time, the EFF in Limpopo denies involvement in the vandalism, but the party insists Vodacom must take responsibility for provoking people.
It's not every person wearing a red T-shirt that is an EFF member. The EFF has never issued any statement or mandate to its member to attend to Vodacom, even when Vodacom provoked the EFF.
The DA has laid charges against the Red Berets.
The EFF continuously proven to be violent, destructive, and are constitutional delinquents that abuses the rights of individuals and their freedom of expression.
Police are investigating a case of malicious damage to property. No arrests have been made. Slindile Masikane in Johannesburg.
The Department of Justice has banned firearms at the Durban Magistrates Court. Now, only court orderlies on duty will be allowed to carry guns. This, of course, in response to last week's event where a police officer fatally shot and killed his estranged wife and her brother before turning the gun on himself while in court. Questions have been raised about how the shooter entered the Durban courtroom armed and whether this amounts to a security lapse. The Justice Department is considering extending the firearm ban to courts across the country. Here's Deputy Justice Minister John Jeffrey.
So what has happened now in this court is there's a ban being put on policemen or police people bringing weapons, firearms into court. It's only the court orderlies, who are also policemen, but they've got a specific function, who can have firearms. And then there's a lot of discussions going on around beefing up security at this court, but also other courts in KZN, as well as across the country.
To other stories making headlines today, former ANC Treasurer General and struggle veteran Mendi Msimang has died at the age of 78. He served as Treasurer for the party during Thabo Mbeki's first term as ANC President. Husband to the late former Health Minister Dr. Manto Shabalala Msimang, he was the High Commissioner in London between 1995 and 98. A judge has granted a class action order in connection with listeriosis cases. This means 14 people will represent the full group of over 1,000 complainants. Health Minister Aaron Motsoaledi confirmed the outbreak claimed more than 180 lives. And South Africa will know tomorrow afternoon who the new National Director of Public Prosecutions is. President Cyril Ramaphosa will make the announcement. He's been considering 5 nominees shortlisted by an advisory panel. He'll choose between advocates Shamila Batoy, Siyabulela Mapoma, Simpiwe Mlotshwa, Rodney de Kock and Andrea Johnson. In August, the Constitutional Court set a deadline of 90 days to choose a new NPA head. Police Minister Becky Cele has been in Port Elizabeth today responding to the Community Policing Forum's calls for help. 10 people have died in the city's northern areas in the past 3 weeks due to gang violence. Cele says the task team will target Galvindale, Helenvale and surrounds and is promised to reduce gang violence. Sandy McCowan caught up with Cele earlier today.
We have met as a police. I've spoken to them, mostly it will be telephonically, and one of them is a member of parliament that we've been talking. I've been talking to the government, as I'm saying, but we are going to have a proper meeting with the representatives of the community now. After that, I want the management to sit down, listen, but after that, the smaller grouping of the management will sit down to hammer forward what do we do from here. But working on the resources, both personnel and other resources. By the time we leave here, there will be a task team working on the matter.
Still ahead on eNews, more hurdles for US President Donald Trump after his former lawyer Michael Cohen accuses him of financial violations during his campaign. And we've got your money news, of course, with Mateo.
Well, trade tensions between the US and China seem to have calmed down after the G20 meeting, and that saw the local market rally up today.
Let's get all your money and business news now with Moteo Kharipe. Moteo, 2 things that we're all watching very closely. Tomorrow, GDP figures. Do you think we'll bounce out of recession?
We're likely to bounce out of recession, and that's the back of the manufacturing and retail trade data that came out in the 3rd quarter. But one thing to watch is that obviously we're not getting enough growth, and to get that growth, we need a country that's running on the correct type of power. And I guess the next thing to watch is Eskom's power supply, which hasn't been too great for businesses. In fact, our desk was speaking to business owners today who say that because they can't afford to get off the grid, some of them might be forced to close and let go of some of the jobs as well. We also spoke to Mike Schussler, who just gave us a picture of what this could look like if Eskom keeps on with the rolling outages.
Eskom owes about 420 billion now, which is about 10% of the economy if you measure it like that. They produce the electricity that we pay for is about 5% of the economy if you look at it like that. Yet the value that they add is very, very small. So it's unlikely that they're going to be able to carry this debt burden of 420 billion. If that debt burden gets bigger, which it is going to do, and that's quite right that that's going to happen, it's going to go to 600 billion. It makes it even more unlikely that Eskom will be able to survive this without drastic measures in place.
420 billion rand?
Yeah, 72 billion in interest.
10% of the economy. How does that make you feel?
It's a bit nerve-wracking, especially if you are a South African consumer who's under pressure, and also if you're a business or startup that's also under pressure, because you do pay your electricity, but you're not getting the service. And in terms of clients, it's hard to explain, and it's becoming a poor excuse to say we couldn't give you business because of electricity.
Yeah, it's a tough one. How are the markets? I believe the rand's a little better.
Definitely much better today. The market actually rallied, the all share up more than 2.5%. Industrials are backed by a stronger Naspers share, while financials were backed by a stronger rand today. It was a good day for mining shares as well. Gold companies up 0.5%, while platinum companies were up 4%, with the entire industry up more than 4.5%. The price of gold at $1,233 an ounce, and platinum was up marginally, with Brent crude at $60 now, 95 cents a barrel. The local currency is strong against all 3 major currencies at 13.66 against the dollar. South Africa also had a strong PMI number that came out today. And in terms of that data, that saw the rand at 15.51 against the euro, and at 17 rand 40 cents against the pound.
I'm just holding on for us, hopefully getting out of recession
Always
tomorrow.
good to hope.
Absolutely. Mateo Kharipe, thank you so much. Let's move now to international news. And US President Donald Trump seems to be headed for troubled waters now that his former lawyer Michael Cohen has taken a plea deal. Cohen has made allegations about Trump's role in financial violations during his campaign and about possible false statements made to Congress. Daily Maverick's associate editor Brooks Spector questions whether Trump can survive yet another scandal.
Michael Cohen is hoping rather frenetically or fervently that his cooperation with the special prosecutor will be sufficient to give him very light sentencing or very light punishment, rather than being taken off to the big house and given orange coveralls for a very long time. We will see how that plays out. Whether will Donald Trump face the music? Well, keep in mind that the election that just happened, that midterm election, brought in a Democratic Party-controlled House of Representatives. That's not so much important as the fact that by controlling that House, they now have the power to subpoena documents and witnesses and to schedule and hold hearings.
Well, still ahead, we'll go to Louis at our weather centre. Hi there, Louis. We'll get all your weather news. And then a night of glitz and glam at the Kennedy Center Honours, celebrating those in the performing arts for their lifetime contributions. Weather news now with Louis Fernandez down in Cape Town. Evening to you, Louis. I can tell you it was cooking here in Joburg. Are we in for more of the same tomorrow?
Well, Sally, Gauteng is under the effects of a heat wave at the moment, and so the heat will be continuing into tomorrow and at least until Wednesday. But let's take a look at what Tuesday brings to the country. We're going to have cloudy weather developing overnight over parts of the Eastern Cape and KZN, along with some fog and light rain possible. But that will start thinning out as the morning heats up. And then in the afternoon, we're going to have thunder showers returning to the eastern interior of the country, but unfortunately dry for Gauteng, where that heat wave will be continuing. Those thunderstorms will thin out toward evening, and then it becomes cloudy once again along the east coast, where a bit more light rain will be likely. In the Northern Cape, it's going to be a dry Tuesday, mild for some areas, as Springbok and Sutherland only reach a maximum temperature of 22 degrees. It will also be a cool day for parts of the Western Cape coastline, but as you head inland, we see those temperatures climbing into the mid-20s, and it will be dry for this region as well. In the Eastern Cape, on the other hand, morning rain expected for parts of the province. Most of that will be light, and the area should be clearer toward afternoon. And similar expected for KwaZulu-Natal, morning fog for the interior along with drizzle, later on a few thunderstorms, and then, as we've seen, a bit of light rain potentially reaching the coastline towards evening once again. Thunderstorms possible for Mpumalanga, but it's going to be dry for Secunda as well as Standerton. And in Limpopo, it's going to be a scorching hot day as temperatures climb into the mid to upper 30s. But the good news is that there could be thunder showers in the afternoon that are likely bringing some relief from the heat. Unfortunately for the northwest, on the other hand, no rain in the forecast as the heat wave continues for some parts of the province. And it's going to be a hot day in the Free State with lots of sunshine. And as mentioned, it is going to be another dry and very hot day for Gauteng. The heatwave continues in the area with just a little bit of cloud development. Let's take a look ahead to what your Wednesday will bring to your part of the country. And thunder showers returning to Gauteng, but it's going to be even hotter, 37 degrees for Pretoria. And finally on Thursday, things will be cooling down for that area as wet weather then spreads into the central parts. And another cold front makes landfall in the west, bringing some wet weather to the Western Cape. That's all from the Weather Centre. It's back to you, Sally.
Thank goodness for the rain. Thank you very much, Louis Fernandez. And finally, it was a night of glitz and glamour at this year's Kennedy Center Honours. Entertainment stars and politicians gathered in Washington last night for the gala event. The ceremony honours those in the performing arts for their lifetime contribution to American culture. Kelly Clarkson and country music groups Lady Antebellum and Brooks and Dunn performed. Host Gloria Estefan began the show with a tribute to the former President George H.W. Bush, who passed away this weekend. Your top stories this evening: concert chaos, 7 suspects arrested after numerous muggings outside the FNB Stadium. This after the Global Citizen Festival last night. Who was to blame? The EFF denies being involved after a Vodacom store was vandalized by a group claiming to be EFF supporters in Limpopo. From me and the team, it's a very good night.